The Depth Stop Dozuki. Let us begin by setting the depth screws. You have to be careful not to set the wing nuts so that they stick below the edge of the depth stop. So you use this little knob on the back to turn the wing nut until it no longer interferes with the depth stop. And you have to do that on both the handle and the far one. You can use the gauge on the Dozuki itself to set the depth, or as I show in the next sequence, you can use a ruler. Now we have the Dozuki set so that the wing nuts won't interfere with the depth stop. Now we can measure how thick our board is. It's exactly 1 inch, and half of 1 inch is a half inch. So we're going to set our Dozuki depth stop to the 1/2 inch mark. We'll loosen both depth stops, and then we'll set them individually to a 1/2 inch on the ruler. You can use the gauge on the Dozuki itself. I've chosen to use a ruler here because I think that it's more clear to you. So there's the depth stop set, and one of the wing nuts is clear and the other is interfering. We have our marks, so let's carefully understand. This is the waste, and we want to keep this material and this material. Just remove the stuff with the X. Okay. Now, when we align our cutting edge of the saw, we want to put it on the waste side of the line, and we want to leave our line. Okay, you can't see this very well from this angle, but let's look at it from this angle. I'm placing the saw on the wood inside the line so that the saw cut runs right up against the edge of the line. You can leave like a millimeter or so because you can chisel it out very carefully later. But you want to make sure that you leave the line. As you start at an angle and then you draw the blade slowly down across to the other side, and making the full length cut. Okay, you can see I've started the cut. It goes all the way across now and leaves the line entirely. Let's finish that cut. When the saw reaches the end of the cut, you'll hear it and you'll feel it. It's quite obvious. Now we're going to finish the cut. We do this with a chisel. You can use a chisel plane or whatever you want. I generally just use a chisel for this. And because there's a knot here, I use a hammer to drive the chisel through the knot so that I don't hurt my delicate little hands. Once I'm through the knot, I don't really need the hammer to finish this. But it's in my hand, so I might just as well finish the line. The chisel I'm using is narrower than the actual cut. I'm sorry about getting my arm in the way here, but I'm just starting the cut from the other end as well to make sure I don't get blowout. I don't put it in very far on the other end. I'm going to go all the way through, just a ways. In this case, I went to the knot just because it was easy. But from now on, you'll see that I just take partial cuts. So then again, I move through till I get to the knot, use the hammer to knock it out after that. And from here, I'm going to start with the hammer. Now I get rid of the hammer, and I just use the chisel to pare this down to the final depth. And you can see you can take quite thick shavings and still get a very good result. And I'm just going down to the bottoms of the saw kerf. And I'm again taking a little cut on the back side here to prevent blowout on the back side. This is locally sawn red alder, even though it looks white. Again, through the knot, I use the hammer, but then for the rest of it, I just use the chisel. And there we have it. A neat and tidy finished cut. And there's our debris to prove it. And there you have it. The hole cut to the final depth of exactly 1/2 inch. There's the mark, 1/2 inch right there, and you can see spot on the line. Thanks for watching.